The wind howled across Ashbrake Station like a wounded beast. Dane Holloway wiped sweat from his forehead as he guided the last supply container into the storage bay. 12 hours of loading freight had left his shoulders burning and his back aching. The station's artificial lights flickered overhead, struggling against the dust storm that had been battering the colony for 2 straight days. Dane locked down the container and checked his scanner. All cargo accounted for. His shift was finally done. Tomorrow would bring another endless day of moving supplies, fixing broken equipment, and pretending he was content with this quiet life. He had chosen this place specifically because nothing happened here. No emergencies, no desperate situations, no chances to fail people who were counting on him. He stepped into the corridor connecting the cargo bay to the residential sector. The storm made the metal walls groan and creak. Sand particles hissed against the exterior hull. Most workers had already retreated to their quarters hours ago. Dane preferred working late. Fewer people meant fewer questions about why a former rescue specialist was hauling boxes on a backwater colony. A sound cut through the storm's fury. Dane stopped walking. There it was again, crying. Not the angry sobbing of frustration, but the broken, desperate kind that came from somewhere deep inside. The kind that meant someone had lost all hope. Dane's instincts kicked in before his brain caught up. He followed the sound to a maintenance alcove near the secondary airlock. The space was barely large enough for equipment storage, let alone a person. But someone small was huddled there in the shadows. The emergency lighting cast strange shadows across scales that shimmered between deep purple and midnight blue. Wings, delicate as paper, trembled against a thin frame. A Drachnary child, no more than 7 or 8 years old by human standards. She wore a torn jacket that was several sizes too large and clutched something glowing in her small clawed hands. "Hey there," Dane said softly, crouching down slowly. He kept his distance, hands visible. "You're safe. I'm not going to hurt you." The child's head snapped up. Golden eyes, bright with tears, stared at him with a mixture of terror and desperate hope. Her scales were covered in dust and grime. She had been here a while. "Are you hurt?" Dane asked. The child shook her head slightly. "Are you lost?" Another shake, more vigorous this time. Dane settled into a sitting position, making himself less threatening. The cold floor seeped through his work pants, but he ignored it. "My name is Dane. What's yours?" The child's mouth opened, then closed. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "Nix. That's a beautiful name, Nix." Dane kept his tone gentle and calm. "Can you tell me why you're hiding here? It's not safe during the storm." Fresh tears spilled down her scaled cheeks. Her whole body shook. "Mother is gone." Dane's chest tightened. Those 2 words carried the weight of worlds. "Gone where?" "The Crimson Wastes." Nix's voice cracked. "For days now. She went to find the healing stones for my brother. He's sick. The medicine costs too much. Mother said the wastes have crystals that can cure him, but she hasn't come back." The Crimson Wastes. Dane knew the place by reputation. Everyone on Ashbrake Station did. The toxic desert stretched for hundreds of kilometers beyond the colony borders. Volcanic gases, unstable ground, temperatures that could boil water during the day and freeze it solid at night. People went into the wastes chasing rumors of valuable minerals. Most never returned. Did anyone go looking for her? Dane asked carefully. Nix nodded miserably. The colony security sent a drone. It saw nothing. The community elders sent 2 scouts. They came back yesterday. Said 4 days is too long. Said mother is dead. Said I should accept it and move on. Her small hands clenched. "But I can't. I won't. She's alive. I know she is." "So you ran away to find help." "Nobody will listen." Nix looked up at him with those enormous golden eyes. "They say one Drachnary life is not worth risking others. They say she made her choice. They say I'm just a child who doesn't understand reality. But I understand perfectly. Everyone has given up. Everyone has decided she's dead without even trying." Dane closed his eyes for a moment. Memories flooded back. His partner, Thomas, caught in a collapsed mine shaft on a remote asteroid. The corporate rescue team that had calculated costs versus probable survival and decided Thomas was not worth the expense. The official report that called it a tragedy but labeled any rescue attempt too dangerous. The way Dane had quit the next day, unable to stomach a system that put price tags on human lives. He had run to this quiet colony to escape those memories, to avoid ever facing that kind of decision again. Yet here was this child, covered in dust and tears, asking him the same question he had asked others 7 years ago. Will you help? When did you last eat, Nix? She blinked at the unexpected question. I don't remember. Dane stood and held out his hand. Come with me. We'll get you cleaned up and fed. Then we'll figure out what to do. Nix stared at his hand for a long moment. You'll help me find Mother? I haven't decided yet, Dane admitted honestly. But I'm not leaving you here in a maintenance alcove during a dust storm. She took his hand. Her scales were rough and warm, her grip surprisingly strong. Dane pulled her to her feet and led her through the empty corridors toward his quarters. His apartment was small and functional. A bed, a table, a tiny kitchen, and a bathroom barely large enough to turn around in. Nick stood in the middle of the room, looking lost while Dane pulled out towels and clean clothes. Bathroom is through there if you want to wash up, he said. I'll heat some food. While she cleaned herself, Dane heated 2 ration packs and grabbed a protein bar. When Nix emerged, her scales were clean and gleaming. She had changed into one of his old shirts, which hung on her like a tent. She still clutched the glowing object from before, a crystal pendant on a worn chain. They ate in silence. Dane watched her devour the food with desperate hunger. She probably had not eaten since running away. The Crimson Wastes are extremely dangerous, Dane said quietly. 4 days is a very long time out there. I know. Nix's voice was small but steady. But until someone finds her body, she's alive. That's how it works. You don't give up on family. You keep looking. You keep hoping. Dane stared at this small, fierce child. She reminded him of himself 7 years ago. Desperate. Angry. Refusing to accept that someone he loved was simply gone. Tell me about your mother, he said. What's her name? Seriva. Nix held up the crystal pendant. She gave me this before she left. It's from our home world. She said it would keep me safe while she was gone. She promised to come back. And your brother? The one who's sick. Takyan. He's 6. He has scale fever. It makes his scales turn gray and fall off. He's in pain all the time. The station doctors say the medicine exists, but it costs more than we could earn in 5 years. So Mother went looking for the crystals that the old stories talk about. The ones that grow deep in the wastes where fire meets water. Dane pulled out his data pad and began searching. The Crimson Wastes were poorly mapped, but he found geological surveys from the initial colony setup. There were areas of volcanic activity near underground aquifers, exactly the kind of extreme environment where rare minerals might form. Get some sleep, he said finally. Take the bed. I'll use the floor. Nix looked at him with hope blazing in her eyes. What about tomorrow? Will you help me? Dane did not answer immediately. He watched her curl up on his bed, still holding that crystal pendant. She fell asleep almost instantly, exhausted from days of fear and desperation. He sat in the darkness, staring at his data pad. This was a terrible idea. He would probably lose his job. He might lose his life. The smart thing was to take Nix back to the community elders in the morning and walk away. But he kept seeing her face when she talked about everyone giving up. He kept hearing Thomas's last transmission from that collapsed mine, asking if anyone was coming. Dane pulled up maps of the Crimson Wastes and began planning a route. He was probably going to regret this, but he had regretted doing nothing for 7 years. Maybe it was time to regret doing something instead. Dawn broke over Ashbreak Station with a blood-red sky. Dane woke to find Nix already awake, sitting at his small table and staring at her mother's pendant. The crystal pulsed with a faint inner light that seemed to brighten and dim like a heartbeat. It glows stronger in certain directions, Nix said without looking up. Mother told me it responds to similar minerals. She said if I ever got lost, I should follow where it shines brightest. Dane sat up, his back protesting from a night on the floor. That could help us track her path. So you're really going? Hope and fear mixed in Nix's voice. I'm going to try. Dane stood and began gathering supplies. But first, we do this properly. We need equipment and permission. The colony administration office opened at 7. Dane and Nix were waiting outside when Director Osman arrived. The director was a tall woman with gray hair pulled back in a severe bun. She listened to Dane's request with an expression that grew progressively colder. Mr. Holloway, I understand your compassion for the child, but the answer is no. Osman's voice was flat and final. We cannot authorize expeditions into the Crimson Wastes. The risk is unacceptable. We've already lost too many people to that hellscape. Seriva might still be alive, Dane said. After 4 days? Impossible. The toxic gases alone would kill someone within 48 hours without proper equipment. Even if she somehow survived that, the temperature extremes, the unstable terrain, the predators. No, Mr. Holloway. She's dead. Taking resources and personnel to search for a body is not justifiable. Nix's hand tightened around Dane's. My mother is not dead. Osmond's expression softened slightly when she looked at Nix. Child, I'm truly sorry for your loss. But sometimes we must accept harsh realities. The colony will provide for you and your brother. You won't be abandoned. I don't want charity, Nix said, her voice shaking. I want my mother. Outside the administration building, Dane knelt down to Nix's level. We'll find another way. They tried the Dracnery Community Center next. The building was old and poorly maintained, tucked into a forgotten corner of the station. Inside, several elderly Dracnery sat around a central fire pit that burned with artificial flames. An elder with silver scales and cloudy eyes rose as they entered. The human and the orphan, he said in heavily accented standard. I know why you come. The answer is still no. Seriva is not an orphan's mother yet, Dane said firmly. She deserves a real search. The elder's wings rustled with agitation. 2 of our strongest scouts already searched. They found nothing. The Wastes claimed Seriva as they claim all who are foolish enough to enter. We will mourn her properly, but we will not send more lives after her. She went for healing crystals to save Takkan, Nix pleaded. She went for family. Doesn't that mean anything? It means she loved her son more than her own survival. The elder's voice was sad but unyielding. That does not change reality. The Wastes do not care about love or sacrifice. They simply kill. Now go, child. Grieve with your brother. Let the dead rest. Back in the corridors, Nix's composure finally cracked. She leaned against a wall and sobbed. Nobody cares. Nobody will help. They've all decided she's already gone. Dane pulled her into a hug, letting her cry into his shoulder. Her small body shook with grief and frustration. He understood exactly how she felt. The helplessness, the rage at a universe that let good people disappear while others stood by and did nothing. When her sobs quieted, Dane made a decision. We don't need their permission. Nix looked up at him with red-rimmed eyes. What? I said we don't need permission. I have survival training. I know how to navigate dangerous terrain. We'll go ourselves. But your job. Some things matter more than jobs. Dane stood. Come on. We need equipment. The equipment depot was run by a grizzled supply officer named Hammond. He listened to Dane's request, then laughed bitterly. You want gear for an unauthorized expedition into the Crimson Wastes? Are you insane, Holloway? Probably, Dane admitted. But I'm going anyway. With or without proper equipment. Hammond's laughter died. He studied Dane for a long moment, then glanced at Nix. Something in his weathered face shifted. I had a daughter once. Ship accident near Proxima. By the time rescue arrived, it was too late. I've always wondered if someone had moved faster, been braver, cared more, maybe she'd still be here. He moved through the depot, pulling items from shelves. Rebreather masks, thermal suits, climbing rope, medical supplies, a portable scanner for detecting toxic gases, emergency rations, 2 plasma cutters in case they needed to break through rock. This never happened, Hammond said, packing everything into 2 large bags. These supplies were damaged in inventory and scheduled for disposal. If anyone asks, you stole them. Thank you, Dane said quietly. Hammond gripped his shoulder. Bring that mother home. Or at least give the kid closure. Either way, you're doing what someone should have done for my daughter. Back in his quarters, Dane spread the equipment across the floor. Nix watched as he checked each item methodically. This was familiar territory. He had done this hundreds of times in his old life. Preparation was the difference between rescue and recovery. The pendant, Dane said. Can you make it respond now? Nix held up the crystal. She closed her eyes in concentration. The crystal's glow intensified, then shifted. It pulsed brighter toward the west, toward the Crimson Wastes. She's that direction, Nix whispered. I can feel her. She's alive and waiting. Dane pulled up his maps. If Seriva had been searching for healing crystals, she would have headed for the geological anomaly called the fracture zones. Deep canyons where volcanic heat met underground water, creating the perfect conditions for rare mineral formation. It was roughly 60 kilometers into the wastes. A 2-day journey on foot through hell. They left at dusk, When the shift change created chaos and nobody noticed two figures slipping out through a maintenance airlock. The moment they stepped outside the colony's environmental shields, the full fury of the wastes hit them. The ground was rust-red and cracked like dried blood. Jagged rocks jutted up like broken teeth. In the distance, volcanic vents spewed sulfurous yellow smoke into the darkening sky. The air shimmered with heat despite the rapidly dropping temperature. Dane's scanner immediately began screaming warnings about toxic particulates and dangerous gases. "Masks on," Dane ordered. They both pulled on their rebreathers. The world became filtered through protective lenses and recycled air. They walked through the night, following the pendant's glow. The temperature plummeted as predicted. Their thermal suits kept them warm, but Dane could feel the cold trying to leach through. Every breath through the rebreather tasted metallic. Every step crunched on loose gravel that threatened to give way. Dawn in the wastes was terrifying. The sun rose like a ball of fire, and within an hour, the temperature soared. Sweat poured down Dane's face inside his mask. The rocks radiated heat like ovens. In the distance, something large and reptilian moved between the stone formations. Native wildlife adapted to this nightmare landscape. "How much farther?" Nyx asked. Her voice was tired but determined. Dane checked his scanner and the pendant. "Another 30 kilometers. We should reach the fracture zones by tonight if we keep moving." They rested during the hottest part of the day, sheltering in the shadow of a massive boulder. Dane rationed their water carefully. Dehydration was as deadly as the toxic air out here. Nyx dozed fitfully while Dane kept watch, his plasma cutter ready in case any of the local predators decided they looked like food. As evening fell, they continued. The pendant's glow grew stronger with each kilometer. Nyx's spirits lifted. "We're getting close." "I know we are." The landscape changed. The flat, cracked plain gave way to rolling hills of volcanic rock. Steam vents appeared, spewing superheated vapor into the air. Dane's scanner went crazy with warnings. They were entering the most dangerous part of the wastes. "Stay close," Dane warned. "Watch every step. The ground here can collapse without warning." They crested a hill and stopped. Below them stretched a massive canyon system. The fracture zones. Deep crevasses cut through the earth like wounds. At the bottom, faint lights glowed. Bioluminescent minerals or thermal vents. Either way, this was where rare crystals formed. This was where Seriva would have gone. "Mother!" Nyx shouted, her voice echoing into the canyons. Dane started to tell her to be quiet, then stopped. If Seriva was down there, if she was alive, she needed to know help had arrived. They made their way down carefully, using the climbing rope to descend the steepest sections. The pendant blazed like a star in Nyx's hand, pulsing frantically. They were close now, very close. At the bottom of the canyon, strange formations rose from the ground. Crystal clusters in impossible colors. Blues and purples and greens that seemed to glow with inner light. Beautiful and deadly. The toxic readings on Dane's scanner were off the charts down here. "Mother!" Nyx called again. A faint sound answered. A weak voice, barely human, calling from deeper in the canyon. "Nyx? Nyx, is that you?" They ran toward the voice, scrambling over rocks and crystal formations. Around a bend in the canyon, they found her. Seriva lay in a small alcove, her scales dull and her wing twisted at an unnatural angle. But her eyes were open. She was alive. "Mother!" Nyx rushed forward and threw herself into her mother's arms. Dane knelt beside them, already pulling out medical supplies. Seriva looked up at him with exhausted gratitude. "You came. You actually came." "We came," Dane confirmed. "Now let's get you home." Seriva was worse than Dane had feared, but better than he had dared to hope. Her right wing was broken, folded at an ugly angle that made him wince. Deep cuts covered her arms and legs where sharp rocks had torn through her protective clothing. Her scales, which should have gleamed like polished gems, were dull and gray with dust and dried blood. But she was conscious. She was breathing. She was alive. For days, Seriva whispered as Dane examined her injuries. "I fell on the second day. Twisted my wing in the crystal formations. Couldn't climb back out." Nyx pressed close to her mother, tears streaming down her face. "I knew you weren't dead. I knew it." Dane pulled out the medical kit and began working. He cleaned and bandaged the worst cuts, then carefully splinted the broken wing. Seriva hissed in pain but didn't cry out. Tough as nails, this one. She would need proper medical care back at the station, but these field dressings would keep her stable for the journey. How did you survive the gases? Dane asked, giving her water from his canteen. She drank greedily, some spilling down her chin. Seriva pointed deeper into the alcove. A small rebreather unit lay there, its power indicator flashing red. Nearly dead, but still functioning. I brought emergency equipment. The mask kept me alive, but the battery is almost gone. Another day, maybe two at most, and I would have suffocated down here. What about food? Water. There's a spring. Seriva gestured to a crack in the rock wall where moisture seeped through. The water is contaminated, but it kept me from dying of thirst. I had emergency rations for 3 days. After that, nothing. Dane gave her a protein bar and more water while he assessed their situation. Getting down into the canyon had been dangerous. Getting back out with an injured Drachnary who couldn't fly would be exponentially harder. The rope would help, but Seriva was weak from days without proper food. They would need to move slowly and carefully. Did you find them? Nyx asked suddenly. The healing crystals for Tatkin? A smile crossed Seriva's exhausted face. She reached into a small pack at her side and pulled out 3 crystals the size of her fist. They glowed with a soft blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. I found them. I was trying to carry them back when I fell. At least the journey wasn't for nothing. Dane stared at the crystals. These fragile, glowing stones were worth a life. Worth a mother's desperate gamble. Worth a child refusing to give up hope. He carefully packed them into his own bag. We rest for an hour, Dane said. Then we move. The journey back will take time, and we need to pace ourselves. They huddled together in the alcove while Dane planned the route. His scanner showed toxic gas levels fluctuating wildly. They would need to time their ascent carefully, moving during the periods when the vents released less poison into the air. The rebreathers had enough filtration capacity for maybe 12 more hours of heavy exposure. After that, they would be gambling with their lives. When the hour ended, Dane helped Seriva to her feet. She swayed, weak from her ordeal, but managed to stand with support. Together, they began the slow climb out of the canyon. Every meter was a battle. Seriva couldn't use her broken wing for balance, so she relied entirely on her legs and one good arm. Dane supported her from below while Nyx climbed ahead, testing handholds and warning them of loose rocks. The pendant around Nyx's neck continued to glow, now responding to the healing crystals in Dane's pack. Halfway up the canyon wall, disaster struck. A rock formation that looked solid crumbled under Seriva's weight. She fell backward with a cry of pain. Dane caught her, the rope straining between them, but the sudden jerk nearly pulled him off the cliff face. They swung there for a heart-stopping moment, suspended over the canyon floor far below. Hold on, Dane shouted. His arms screamed with the strain of supporting both their weights. The rope bit into his harness, cutting off circulation. He couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only hold on with every ounce of strength he possessed. Nyx scrambled down to them, moving with the natural agility of her species. She grabbed her mother's good arm and helped stabilize her. Together, they got Seriva's feet back on solid rock. I'm sorry, Seriva gasped. I'm so sorry. I'm too weak. I'm going to get you both killed. You're not, Dane said firmly. We're all getting out of here together. No one gets left behind. Ever. They continued climbing. Dane's muscles burned. His hands were raw inside his gloves. But he kept moving, kept supporting Seriva's weight, kept them all ascending toward the canyon rim. Behind his rebreather mask, he could taste blood from biting his cheek. He didn't care. They were so close. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the wastes, they reached the top. All 3 of them collapsed on solid ground, gasping for air through their masks. Dane's entire body shook with exhaustion. Seriva lay still, her eyes closed, breathing in shallow pants. Nyx curled up against her mother, unwilling to let go. We rest here for the night, Dane said when he could speak again. Tomorrow we cross the wastes. He set up a small emergency shelter using thermal blankets and support poles. It wasn't much, but it would shield them from the worst of the temperature extremes. Inside, they huddled together for warmth as the desert night turned freezing. Why did you come? Seriva asked Dane in the darkness. You don't know me. You owe us nothing. Why risk your life for strangers? Dane was quiet for a moment. I had someone once. A partner. We worked rescue operations together. He died in an accident because the people in charge decided saving him cost too much. I couldn't help him, but I could help you. That has to count for something. It counts for everything, Seriva whispered. You gave my daughter her mother back. You gave my son a chance to live. How can I ever repay that? Just get home safe. That's payment enough. They slept fitfully through the night, taking turns keeping watch. Dawn came with the same violent red sky. Dane checked their supplies. Food and water were low but sufficient. The rebreather filters were nearing their limits. They had maybe 6 hours of protection left. They needed to move fast. The journey across the waste was a blur of pain and determination. Every step was agony for Seriva, but she kept moving. Nick stayed close to her mother, offering support whenever Seriva stumbled. Dane led the way, constantly checking his scanner and adjusting their route to avoid the worst toxic zones. By midday, they could see Ashbreak Station in the distance. The familiar domes and towers looked like a mirage shimmering in the heat. So close, but still kilometers away. Dane pushed them harder, knowing the rebreather filters were dying. The masks began beeping warnings. Red lights flashed. They had an hour at most before the filters failed completely. Come on, Dane urged. We're almost there. Keep moving. They stumbled forward through the rust-red landscape. The station grew larger. Dane could make out individual buildings now. People moving between structures. They were going to make it. Against all odds, they were actually going to make it. The maintenance airlock appeared ahead. The same one they had left through 2 days ago. It looked like a gateway to paradise. Dane's legs felt like rubber. Seriva could barely stand. Nyx was supporting half her mother's weight. But they reached the airlock door. Dane pounded on the emergency access panel. Alarms blared inside the station. The airlock cycled open. Hands reached out, pulling them inside. Medical personnel rushed forward with gurneys and emergency equipment. Dane pulled off his rebreather mask and sucked in clean, filtered air. It tasted like life itself. Beside him, Seriva and Nyx removed their masks. Mother and daughter clung to each other, both crying and laughing at the same time. The medical team whisked Seriva away to the infirmary. Nyx tried to follow, but Dane caught her hand. Let them work. She'll be fine now. You saved her. We saved her. Nyx looked up at him with those golden eyes, now shining with joy instead of despair. Thank you. Thank you for believing me when no one else would. Director Osmond appeared, her face unreadable. Mr. Holloway, you blatantly disregarded direct orders. You stole colony equipment. You endangered yourself and a child on an unauthorized mission. I should have you arrested. Yes, ma'am, Dane said tiredly. You probably should. Osmond's stern expression cracked slightly. However, you also accomplished what we said was impossible. You brought back someone we had declared dead. That takes courage. And stubbornness. Both qualities we need more of in this colony. She paused. Your old job is gone. But I'm creating a new position. Emergency Rescue Specialist. Interested? Dane blinked in surprise. You're not firing me. I'm promoting you. Someone around here needs to remind us that lives matter more than risk assessments. Apparently, that's you. 3 days later, Dane visited the medical ward. Seriva sat up in bed, her wing properly set and healing. Color had returned to her scales. Takkan, a small drachnary boy with patches of gray scales, sat beside her. In his small hands, he held one of the healing crystals. It glowed softly, and where it touched his scales, the gray faded to healthy purple. Nyx perched on the other side of the bed, talking animatedly about their journey. When she saw Dane, she jumped up and ran to hug him. Takkan's getting better, she said excitedly. The doctors say the crystals are working. His scales are healing. Dane looked at the small family together and felt something loosen in his chest. A weight he had carried for 7 years. He hadn't been able to save Thomas. But he had saved Seriva. He had given Nyx her mother back. He had given Takkan a chance to grow up healthy and strong. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was how you lived with loss. Not by forgetting, but by making sure others didn't have to feel the same pain. Thank you, Dane Holloway, Seriva said formally. You gave me my life. My family owes you everything. You owe me nothing, Dane said. Just promise me something. Promise you'll watch your kids grow up. Be there for them. That's all the payment I need. Seriva smiled, tears in her eyes. I promise. Outside the medical ward, Hammond found Dane in the corridor. The old supply officer nodded approval. Heard you got promoted. About time this station had someone willing to take risks for the right reasons. About time someone gave me a reason to take those risks again, Dane replied. He walked through the station with a lighter step than he had felt in years. The corridors didn't seem quite so empty anymore. The work didn't seem quite so meaningless. Somewhere in this colony, a mother was healing, a son was recovering, and a daughter had learned that hope and stubbornness could move mountains. That night, Dane placed a new photo on his wall. Nix had taken it with a borrowed camera. Dane, Seriva, Nix, and Takkan, all together in the medical ward. A family saved. A promise kept. A reminder that sometimes the impossible was just difficult, and difficult was worth fighting for. He looked at the old photo of Thomas one more time. "I did better this time, partner," he whispered. "I didn't give up. I think you'd be proud." The stars shone through his small window. Out there, the crimson waste still claimed lives. But today, they had given one back. And tomorrow, if someone else needed help, Dane would be ready. Because some things mattered more than safety, more than rules, more than fear. Hope mattered. Family mattered. And refusing to give up when everyone else already had, that mattered most of all.